species outcompete each other. In each niche, you don't have 10 animals that compete for exactly the same resources. Because the most efficient one will kill all the others, basically. Will force all the others out.
Can I also say something interesting about chimpanzees is they're kind of going through a stone age at the moment. They're starting to use stone tools and pass tools down from sort of
language,
parent to child. And language, yeah, you're right. We thought they were sort of random calls, but it turns out they're developing a sort of pseudo-semi-language. So they are developing as far as we can see. It's just incredibly slow, which is what the evolutionary model would predict.
Okay, right. Okay, so that kind of answers my question. Okay, it kind of points to it a little bit. Mm-hmm. I asked this other guy, Nims or whatever, according to evolution, if we started from a common ancestor and we evolved from a biblical standpoint, it looks very solid that since we are superior to them as far as in intelligence and other different levels, and we look much different than the chimps, the bonobos, the gorillas, the orangutans. They basically live the same. They got the same behaviors.
Yep.
Humans are much more intelligent. We have rose-hip neurons. So what I was saying to him is, during this evolutionary path, what was the environmental pressures or whatever you could contribute to why we gained this serious advantage and this completely different appearance and behaviors? Why don't we have any? So wait a minute. Why don't we have any smart chimps? And I don't mean ones that can do the little things you said that they just learn how to do for humans. Why are they not more intelligent?
Okay, yeah, I'll answer that. So usually when you have a divergence of species, it's usually down to environment or other pressures around it. So as far as I know, what they think is that the humans were in the savanna, the sub-Saharan savanna in Africa. The chimpanzees, they lived more in places with a lot of foliage, a lot of trees, a lot of stuff like that. So there are a number of things that distinguish humans from chimpanzees. And, we're smarter because we couldn't do things like hide in the trees. We had to take a different approach. We couldn't as easily creep up on prey. Chimps are very good at stalking and capturing and grabbing monkeys and eating them. Whereas in the savannah, that might not have worked. So humans not only need to be smarter to track prey, to follow tracks, there's also another benefit that we have, and that's that we sweat through the pores on our skin. Now that's for persistence hunting, where we basically track an animal and we don't outrun it, we out-endure it. And the reason why is because we can sweat and that cools us off. And that is something that the chimps never developed because they don't live in the sub-Saharan African climates that we do, or we did, I guess, that we've now, moved throughout the world. But it may have been environmental pressures that say, hey, you have to be smarter because you can't hide in the trees. You can't use the trees to your advantage. These are the kinds of pressures that cause some beneficial mutations. And what they say, it's probably the chromosome 2 fusion between 2A and 2B of the other apes that caused our brains to get bigger, our jaws to be able to communicate easily, and do a number of other changes that were beneficial for survival in the savannah rather than jungle.
Okay, real quickly. Yeah. I find that to be very lacking. Okay.
Why's that?
Like I said, hold on 1 second. Like I said about the rose-hip neurons that we have. Okay, we're much more intelligent. There are people that live in these remote islands that still follow the tradition, that still hunt the same way that primitive man, like you would say, do that. If you take one of them out of that society and put them into a modern world, they would excel in intelligence. Chimps don't do that. Chimps don't do that. You can't take a chimp out of the jungle and expect for him to learn to read or anything like that. there is a complete disparity between the intelligence of humans and chimps. Environmental pressures is not significant. There's nothing that's going to gaining intelligence is going to create a mutation that's going to make the brain larger. You got people with very small brains that are very intelligent. So that find that to be very insignificant. Do you have a better answer than that?
Yeah, so we don't usually take the size of brains to be the intelligence of an animal. We usually take it as a ratio from sort of brain size to the mass of the creature, and that's what we're measuring here. And yeah, you can take somebody who lives in the jungle, put them in a different environment, and they're just as smart. Once we started to develop intelligence, if something is beneficial, it will keep developing. So your questions are flawed because you're sort of saying, well, what caused it to evolve? And then you're saying, well, why did it keep evolving? Because it was beneficial. But that doesn't negate the original
I think both
region.
of you guys on, because C. Brown brings on discussion of bringing primordial humans into a certain aspect and still try to call them moral when primordials are the same things as you can consider them like the Aztec family or what we see today, Kabbalists, and
Right.
And Mark
Hey,
Reid.
so Mark, I got a question for you.
Yeah,
I
sure.
heard through the grapevine that you were denying the existence of the editase proteins. Is that correct?
No.
Well, so you agree that they do exist?
Yeah. Why would I think they don't exist?
Well, I mean, last night you were arguing that they weren't, is what I was told.
No, I wasn't.
So you
I
do
argued that mistakes in the genome are mutations and they're not necessarily fixed all the time. Would you agree with that statement?
Well, if you're talking about fixed as in like the population, we're talking about fixed. The word fixed here, this is another example of hyperliteralist disorder, I think. Because the term fixed in this context means being repaired.
Well, I never said that editase doesn't exist, but I said that there are mutations that are not fixed in the genome from generation to generation. Would you agree with that or not?
Okay, so you do.
Well, I asked you a question. Would you agree with that or not?
I started this whole thought process. You're trying to shift it. I'm getting very specific with you right now.
Well, I'm just asking you a question. Are you afraid of questions?
Bro, every time we have conversations, you never want to actually get down in the dirty. You always try and shift things. So
I just answered it.
Dude, I have already answered this exact question. So pay attention. I answered this exact question. Yes, I did. I literally did. Okay? Go on rewind and silence whoever's talking. Now, so you do agree that there are DNA repair mechanisms in biological systems. Is that correct? Okay.
But I'm saying that they're not 100% effective.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's certain areas to get through.
But absolutely.
But in general, the vast majority of them are repaired.
Sure.
Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, there is a DNA repair mechanism. It's not 100% effective. There are mutations that are carried on to the next generation because it is not repaired. That's my entire point. I don't see why there's a problem with that.
So George is saying that you denied there was a DNA repair.
Yeah, so he's got no idea what he's talking about. He's obviously read something into what I've said and misrepresented it. Like people on this show keep doing. They keep doing this. They keep saying, "Hey, you said this," when I said nothing of the sort.
Well, it's funny that you make that projection by other folks.
Well, go back and watch it. It's your show. Why don't you watch it?
Silence, dude. Dude, you interrupt everybody all the time. It's so freaking annoying. Now,
well, watch it. I didn't say that.
The whole point that I was making about it responding to your whole point of people misinterpreting you is you literally just applied a different definition to fix in relation to DNA repair mechanisms into the overall fixation into the general population versus a DNA repair mechanism. Like you're the one who was misinterpreting a word.
Oh, really? What word is that?
And the application thereof.
What word
and then
is
you're
that?
claiming that other people are the ones doing it to you? Like, do you not recognize how hilarious that is and the level of projection?
What word is that?
This goes back to your whole hyper literal interpretation of the word surfing last night in relation to monkeys coming across from Africa.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
So I mean that entire thing was just a bit of, you know, I mean, I can understand that you're making a sort of rhetorical point by using a certain word. I didn't understand what they were talking about, so I sort of said, hey, they're not really surfing if they're clinging to a raft. I don't see why you've got a problem with that and why you're so fixated on it. Seems that you're obsessed with this kind of thing. If we can clarify the position,
Mark, I
it seems like you can't. Who's interrupting now, John? Who's interrupting now? Who's interrupting now, mate? I think that if you can clarify your position, there's no reason why you should.
You are so full of shit. You do this all the time. You try to act all calm and like, I just don't understand why people are misinterpreting and just not understand, dude. Because
wow,
you
what a
play
nice
this
guy.
Game,
you just swear at people.
You play this game.
You just swear at people. You are so rude.
You play that. You're in backstage. I'll let you back in a second. You play this game in all your debates, in your streams. You act like you're just being this super duper reasonable, open-minded individual, and then you dance around, project, make all these totally accidental interpretations of things, while you don't claim to be an idiot. So I don't understand how you magically have so many misinterpretations on a regular basis of just not being able to understand what people are doing. And now you're like, oh, what a nice Christian swearing at people. I don't claim to be perfect. I don't claim to be some super nice guy. And I call people out who are full of shit when they're full of shit. And you, Mark Reid, are full of shit. And that's just the way it is. And I'm sorry if you live in a holier than thou environment. I don't act holier than thou to people. I just ask people to not act like idiots and be straight up. And if you're going to prevaricate and misrepresent people, then you can get reamed like the jackass that you are. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is a case of somebody who is really bent out of shape by arguments being presented and can't come up with a reasonable argument themselves. So you've got to swear at people and toss them out and mute them. It's very defensive and small-minded behaviour. The whole fact that you may say something and then you clarify, what, you know, little PP over here is not willing to do is let people go back and clarify what they meant in the first place, because he thrives on the garbage dumpster fire where nobody can get their point across, nobody can say anything, and then hides behind, you know, mute and stuff like that. This is why, you know, he resorts to, oh, well, I'm not nice, I'm not, it's funny, 1 Peter 3:15, you're ignoring your own Bible, it's interesting. But going back to the total
Never heard of the concept of rebuking?
Well, I mean, yeah, no, I get that.
Why do you have to?
Yeah, if I could just finish.
Why do you think you're entitled to
going
people...
back to the whole thing about editase, when I said that, hey, mistakes do make it through to the genome, they do pile up, and they are mutations making it through to the genome. If you think that's saying that editase doesn't exist, then I don't know what to tell you. You can go back and watch your own stream if you'd like. I mean, it's on the internet. You can go back and watch it. You know, if you're claiming that I said it, well, great, but, you know, you can go back and watch it and see. Go for it.
Okay, let me ask one question, Mark.
Yeah, sure.
Does this editase enzyme, does it have a purpose to remove the
mistakes,
to do its job, to remove mistakes and remove mutations?
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, that's what it does, yeah.
So it does have a purpose. So from an evolutionary standpoint...
Well, yeah, I think...
Hold on 1 second. Let me finish answering the question, please.
Sure, sorry, yeah, you're right.
From an evolutionary standpoint, what would be the criteria for evolution to evolve a mechanism that actually goes against the whole idea of evolution, mutations, and natural selection? How could evolution evolve such a mechanism?
Well, it's sort of, well, for a start, I know that, like, when you say purpose, I think that I get what you mean. I'll probably call it function, but, you know, I get what you mean. So if you have a system that is going to kill the individual or result in an extremely detrimental effect, if there is no sort of governing mechanism. The creatures that, or the organisms that do not develop that control mechanism or do not have it are going to die. They're just going to die. Right? So when you're duplicating DNA and you're allowing just unlimited mistakes into it, then sooner or later you're going to have them pile up, and that creature is going to not survive in the wild as well as something with an editase to regulate those mutations, right?
Okay, so wait, real quickly, are you saying that some creatures did not evolve the editase and some did, and the ones that evolved the editase are the ones that survived?
I would imagine, I mean, I'm not a geneticist, but I would imagine that very early on in the development, as far as I understand it, some of these enzymes did occur, and the ones with that is a massive advantage, like a huge advantage.
Okay, are you?
But
saying
I don't know
for
sure. I don't know for sure.
Okay, are you saying that these species or organisms were pretty much they weren't complex at the time, and then they developed this enzyme, and then this enzyme evolved into what it is today, and then the ones who did not get it, they all just died out.
Well, but when you say evolved into what it is today, I'd imagine that that very early on it got fixed in the population because it is such a beneficial advantage. Do you know about mutations being fixed in populations?
Exactly, but what I'm saying is, I don't know how evolution could design something that really have a purpose.
Well, it doesn't really design. It just selects for what's the most beneficial.
Okay, so you got any idea how it selected these enzymes, these protein sequences, okay, that came together that actually had, like, because it's not just one protein, you know, because you have to elongate, you know, the DNA or the RNA, and you gotta snip it out, and you gotta recombine it with other machineries. So basically, it's like a factory type assembly type process. So you got any idea how evolution can design an assembly-like process and also a recognition process that recognize when a nucleotide is incorrect?
Yeah, so these machines that you're talking about, and you may not know it, but you've sort of alluded to irreducible complexity here. They may have been doing some other things before they became the machinery of what they're doing now. So
what do you think they were doing?
What do you
think they were doing?
Well, I think the most famous one was the flagellum in bacteria was actually doing something else before it became a flagellum for movement, and that's why it failed the test of irreducible complexity.
But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about
right, but I'm
enzymes.
using it as an example of machinery that can be doing one thing and then they do another. It's incredibly beneficial. I mean, I can look it up for you, the bacterial flagellum.
But I think you're shifting right here. I want to stay very specific.
Why?
Okay.
Well, I'm not really.
I think you're shifting. I would be very specific. You got these machines.
Yeah.
You got like at least 6 different robot machines that actually have a specific job. Where you're gonna stretch out. You're gonna stretch out the DNA. You're gonna snip it. You're gonna bring. You're gonna put the correct nucleotide in there, and then you're gonna size it back together. Okay, those are specific purposes.
Mm-hmm. Which is So you're talking about irreducible complexity is what you're talking about right now. You may not be calling it that, but what you're saying is the argument from irreducible complexity, which completely failed because machines can have a different purpose than they do now.
Well, give me some example. I think that's a phase.
I did give you an example.
Well, I want to ask C. Brown, like, if they're not doing what they're doing, then what's the other point of their purpose?
They were designed to do what they do.
Well, here's the problem.
Can you demonstrate that's the case? Can you demonstrate that design?
I can demonstrate that design by looking at. Hold on, by looking at assembly lines, the way it worked for us through intelligence. Okay, you have purpose. Okay, if you have 5 machines all having a specific purpose, okay, you can't prove that machine had a different purpose before.
Yes.
But they're doing something that's against the evolutionary paradigm. They're repairing mutations.
But it's doing everything you wanted to do in evolutionary paradigm.
But evolutionary paradigm is not thinking. It's not thinking.
Well, here's a question that'll help answer that.
Yeah,
Does natural selection see the short term or the long
term? Both. It depends. That's a very, very hard question to answer, because if something in the short term is going to really detrimentally affect the organism, then they won't survive to pass it on, right? They're going to die. But if something isn't as detrimental to cause them to be wiped out, and in the long term they survive to procreate, then it will select for that. Then you've got stuff like genetic drift, which is sort of sheer randomness, which isn't a huge impact, but it still is, right? So you can have something that, like, well, we're talking about ERVs, right? So you can have an ERV that is detrimental, but not enough to completely sort of wipe out everybody with the ERV or the retrovirus that attacks them and gets inserted into their DNA. And then if a mutation happens that it's then beneficial, they will then flourish. And that will be fixed in the genetic line.
Well, see, the problem that I have with that is...
Yeah. But it's unfixed. It's unfixed, Mark.
Natural selection is
what's unfixed?
Generally understood to see the short term. And what I mean by that is, natural selection's concerned with the survival into the next generation, or me surviving into tomorrow, not me, possibly getting cancer 30 years from now. So natural selection is mostly concerned with the short term, but what we see in terms of these DNA elements in the genome, like these DNA repair enzymes or the endogenous retroviral elements that assist in determining cell types, gene expression, embryological development, so on and so forth, or even just these epigenetic mechanisms like DNA methylation, on how they can keep a lot of these functional DNA elements silenced or turned off until they need to be called upon. Kind of like how we have, a spare tire in the back of our car. We're not using it. We got 4 tires, but if we do get a flat tire, well, thank God we have the spare tire, because human engineers were thinking ahead. They were thinking long term, right? Long-term planning. So my problem with invoking evolutionary mechanisms like selection, mutations, and genetic drift to explain what looks to be like forward-thinking mechanisms and DNA elements in our genome is you are now giving these evolutionary mechanisms a mind.
Well, I don't think... Sorry, go ahead. Well, I don't think it needs a mind at all. I'm completely unconvinced of that, and what we've seen is it doesn't. And so you sort of said it's mostly concerned with short term, and I would 100% agree with that. But that leaves, mostly isn't completely short term. There is a long-term process at work. And I think it's telling with all the species that have gone extinct and all the animals that have died because of detrimental mutations, that only sort of a very small amount whose mutations have then proved to be beneficial through either a change of environment or mutation of, say, something detrimental like an ERV, then go on. It is unusual, if you add up all of the extinctions, for organisms to survive. We've got way more extinct organisms than we do alive ones. So it does seem to be the case that if they were designed with these things in them, we wouldn't nearly get the extinctions and the wiping out of organisms that we see in the fossil record.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't feel like the beneficial mutations is what's really giving them that much of a selective advantage. I think they just dying out. Either they died in the flood or whatever the case is.
Really?
But okay. I don't see how you could basically get all these ERVs and these repair mechanisms just based on a mutation. And I don't see the other creatures who did not get it, because really when we look at it, they all have the same repair mechanisms. All of them have it.
Right, which is why I said very, very early on, because if you follow the evolutionary model, and I realize you don't agree with it, and that's fine, that if you start off with a very, very small thing that then branches out, everything past the development way back ages ago will have the same genetic code from that mutation. Like, for instance, like we were talking about ERVs, it's why the scientists and geneticists say that the ERV is present, I think 208 ERVs in the humans, 205 are the same in chimpanzees because they're branching out. And these ERVs may have been like ages ago, from when animals first came about. And they sort of,
There's actually 256 unique ones in chimps.
Well, I want to point out, because there's a few points I want to...
Well, I didn't say that, John. I said there was 208 and 205 of those are in chimps.
Hey, Stan, I want you to take over. I just want to ask one question. Why do you have so much faith in evolution? Everything you're saying is just complete speculation. You have no idea what the early genomes look like or what they had in there, but you have so much faith. Why is you so bent on believing evolution? And are you one of those evolutionists who basically feel that there's no evidence for creation and there's no evidence for God?
Yeah, I do assert that I have... Well, so there's a couple of things there, so I'd probably have to ask you, and I'll just cover this, like what faith is to you. What do you mean by faith? Because a lot of people have a lot of different definitions. The second thing you said is, do I think there's no evidence for God? I wouldn't say no evidence. I think the evidence is so poor I cannot reasonably bring myself to believe in a god or gods or any of the other things that have been presented to me. But what do you mean by faith? What's your definition of faith?
Because it's like everything you're saying, starting from you could not answer the question why we don't have any smart chimps. You dodge the whole thing about the brain size, being a significant factor. You had the minuscule answer about these environmental pressures is why humans evolved, rose hip neurons, and why we could build spaceships, and why chimps, basically scratch their ass all day in the jungle. You don't have any answer for the EIV.
I thought I did answer that. I didn't dodge that in the slightest, actually.
You have no answer for anything, but you have a tremendous amount of faith. Why?
Okay, so what's sort of ironic here is that you've said I have no answers for anything while sort of not answering what you mean by faith, which is actually what I asked. I didn't dodge the chimp question. I sort of outlined what scientists think about the evolution of chimps versus humans due to different environment and the different ways in which we hunted prey. Like humans needed a brain to be able to track, and you completely glossed over the whole sweating from your pores thing that I said, which is our other major distinguisher. Can I just finish for a second? I'll let you go. I'll just finish for a second. And
go
that's
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. And that's the other major difference, and it sort of ties into the savannah and the way that we sort of developed. But the whole thing was that I asked you, what do you mean by faith? And I'm not trying to be glib or dodge or whatever. It's just faith to me, and maybe it'll help. I'll say what I think faith is. Faith to me, when someone says faith, it's like where the Bible says confidence in something unseen or unobserved, basically. Is that your definition of faith, or do you have something different?
Well, okay, so I'll be the first one to tell you that, I do have faith in the Bible. I don't understand everything about the Bible.
But is that not? Sorry to interrupt. Is that your definition of faith, or do you have another one I should be paying attention to?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so faith just means that you believe something. Okay, it depends on what level of faith. Okay, if you believe something, from your heart or whatever, but you don't necessarily have solid evidence for, it's faith. Okay, but you have a strong belief in, and then the Bible also says, belief in the unseen or whatever. I can't remember the exact scripture.
I can't remember. Yeah, it's
how
okay.
that go.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing about it is, you have so much faith in evolution. You got so much faith in. You can't. These questions, you are doing a miserable job answering. We talk about rose hip neurons. We're talking about a distinction between chimps and humans, and what humans can do, what chimps can do. And you're talking about, we got all this progress based on some environmental pressures. And then when I press you about, pygmies and people living in primitive societies, and how you could just take them into normal society, and then they could just flourish, but a chimp can't. So you believe that we evolved, but you have no mechanism on how we can evolve from a chimp to a spaceship building human, but you have faith that we did.
Yeah, so chimps, like as I pointed out, and I think maybe that you missed me saying it, is that chimps are making progress. They are starting to create tools and are starting to develop language, and we're seeing that in real time. It's just incredibly slow. So there may be a point in the future that these chimps may be able to, maybe 1 million years, these chimps may be up to where we are now. We don't know, because we don't know what the chimps will do in the future, but they're doing behaviors that seem to be comparable to the Stone Age of humans. Now, when you said believe something from your heart, I kind of get what you're saying. You believe things because you feel it deep within yourself, I guess. My heart pumps blood around my body. It doesn't do anything more than that. People say they feel it in their heart because you have emotions that cause your heart to speed up, like adrenaline and things like that. But your heart doesn't do anything. I believe something from my brain, from my logic, reasoning, intelligent analysis of something. And that's where I'm coming from for evolution, because there is a lot of evidence to suggest that it is correct, and all I can do is use my brain to evaluate that.
I don't think you're using your brain. I think you're using your heart.
Well, I am.
I think it's very obvious.
Well, again, you may not think I'm using my brain, but I'm certainly not using my heart.
You just made the point that chimps are making advancements 5 million years late. They're starting to do these very simple things. Then you have the faith that in 1 billion years they'll be able to do more.
Well, I actually said I don't know.
Right. But you got faith because you pointed to 1 million years to the future. But
well, I said that it's possible. I did say that it's possible, and I don't know. This is the kind of misrepresentation that I'm talking about. So when I say, hey, they're developing stone tools, and perhaps in 1 million years they might be where we are, but we don't know. And then you say you have faith in this thing happening is completely misrepresenting what I said.
I have tremendous faith that chimps, which million years ain't gonna last anyway, but if it was, they'd still be scratching their ass in the jungle.
You could be right. But I don't know why chimps, if they're so stupid, would start to develop tools and language. It seems a bit weird
all
to
of
me.
them, but the thing about it is, all of them, chimps, orangutans, gorilla, they're all doing the same thing. But humans are not. But yet we have the same common ancestor, and we're doing things totally different.
Yeah.
That's faith. You have a lot of faith, Mark.
No, I don't have anything that I would call faith, because I don't believe something from my heart, as you said, and I don't believe something sort of unobserved. I don't think that's a very good way to evaluate reality.
But how do you know it's coming from your brain? Listen, if the evidence is pointing away from from logic, if it's a point away from logic, it's observable, it's going against logic. How could you make that distinction that it's not coming from your heart, it's coming from your brain, if logically what you're saying is not making any sense whatsoever, and it's observable?
Yeah, so that makes
chimps are not getting smarter. The smarter they're getting is what humans are teaching them.
Yeah, okay. So sorry. You've sort of gone through a lot there. I don't understand how something observable is not coming from your brain. It seems a bit weird because your brain sort of is attached to all of your senses.
What's observed is the intelligence of humans.
Okay, so we've got two
primates.
That's what's observed. We've got two methodologies here, and I apologize, this is way off subject. I was kind of dragged down here. Not your fault, but we've got two methodologies. We have one where we're using a heart and feelings to determine something, and the other using your brain, logic, reason, rationality to determine something. I choose the one that's brain, logic, rationality, reasoning. I don't go for faith because, to me, faith is just, like you said, what you believe something in your heart, it's just your feelings. And feelings are terrible at evaluating whether reality is true or not. It's not a good way. You can feel anxious about going into a dark alley in a bad neighborhood at night. It may be perfectly safe. It's a bad way to analyze whether something is true or not. Does that make sense?
Okay, I'm gonna let I had enough time to speak. I'm gonna let Donnie go with that one.
Sure.
But honestly, I just want to say one thing.
Yeah.
You got a tremendous amount of faith. You don't want to believe that God exists.
Well, I mean, you can say that.
All the evidence. Hold on, can I just finish? I'm gonna let.
Yeah, sure.
Let
Sorry.
me finish. All the evidence points to what we observe. We deserve a distinctive line between humans versus chimps, bonobos, all that. That's observable. That's from the mind. Okay, your heart do not want to believe that God created us separate. This is your heart talking. It's not your mind talking. Your mind is what you're observing. Your heart is what you want to believe.
Okay, so I don't have any faith in anything that under the definition you've given. What's really weird is you're now telling me what I think, sort of you don't want to believe, which is not true, and I should know because I'm me. I don't know how you would claim to know what I'm thinking and what I would want. It seems weird to me, but if you want to believe that, you can believe it, but it's certainly not the truth. And the other thing is you sort of said, oh, well, this is your heart. As I said, my heart pumps blood around my body. That's all it does. It does a number of nerves, can be incited by chemicals like adrenaline and things like that. It doesn't make decisions or evaluate anything. It's just a heart.
The reason why I can make these strong statements is because of the fact is that I'm allowing you to tell me how you feel and what you think about it, and I'm making a correct assessment based on what you're saying. Also, the fact is that, listen, the clear bottom truth is, to be an atheist and to be an evolutionist, you got to have like 3 different factors. 1, you got to have a desire to God, not believing in God. 2, you got to have a tremendous amount of faith. And the opposite flip side of that coin, you have to be a denialist because you have to deny the evidence from the core of your heart.
Yeah, I know you keep saying that, and I know people have probably told you that.
That's the only way that you could be an atheist evolutionist.
I know people have told you that. It's just not true. I don't have a massive... It would be really nice if there was some kind of justice after death, or there would be a place I could live forever, or all of these things. It would be great, but I don't see any reason to believe it. You're just plain outright wrong. I'm sorry that somebody lied to you and told you this utter tripe. I mean, and you can say, hey, you don't really believe that and stuff, and are you really going to sit here and say that I don't know what I think and believe? Are you actually going to do that?
Let me ask you a question. Do you really think that, biologically, that we can't define a woman, that a man is not born a man, he's not a man, that he can believe that he's a woman and just believe that he's a woman? Do you feel that that's possible?
Well, it's really off topic. I don't mind answering this, but
the reason why I'm making that correlation is because of the fact is that you can say what you believe.
So,
okay,
I think that biological male and female exist. I think that biological things do exist, right? I'm not disputing that, but I think that manhood and womanhood and what's manly and womanly, if you want to describe what they are, they in no way point to anything physical. They mostly point to a certain conduct you have within society, a certain role that you fill in society, certain traits like elegance, softness for women, elegance for women, strength, guardianship for men. So I think that it is more than reasonable with these ideas of womanly and manly, because you can call a guy womanly, right? Someone can be a biological male and you can say, hey, you're really womanly, and that might 100% be true, even though, under your definition they're a biological male. So I think that man and woman are a gender that is socially defined, and we've seen in other societies, Thai society, I think, I'm struggling to remember, I think in Indian society there are other genders which fill roles that are both men and women, vice versa, and another role entirely. So there's a lot of different genders in different cultures that so yeah, I think that if somebody does choose that they want to take a gender role that is not their the one that is traditionally assigned to them at birth, I think that's fine. Does that answer your question?
Do you think it's true that a man could become a woman because he wants to be a woman?
I think that a man can take on a woman gender role and then call themselves a woman, yes.
Okay. All right, somebody else could speak. I think, Stanley, you had some stuff you wanted to say.
I'm not sure what that's got to do with ERVs, but hey, sure.
Because I think it's all about denialism. I told you the attributes that you must have to be an atheist evolutionist. You got to be denying. You have to.
So the problem, C. Brown.
Hate God.
The problem, C. Brown. That's not really an argument in sort of saying, hey, well, you're just denying it. It's not really an argument that's persuasive at all, because I could just say, hey, you're just in denial that God doesn't exist, and then where would we be? Just I'm saying you're denying something, you're saying I'm denying something. It doesn't get us to anything. I think that for, on my part, I'd like some kind of argument that shows why I'm wrong and convince me otherwise.
DNA,
DNA exists,
machinery within the cell, the epigenetic system, our response to the environment, rose hip neurons, the fine-tuning of the universe. I mean, what do you want?
Well, I think that the universe is kind of fine-tuned to make black holes. It's an incredibly hostile place, like insanely hostile.
And that's,
I don't know how
right there.
Well, yeah, it doesn't really show how...
Oh my God, Mark, seriously, you think it's fine-tuned for black holes?
Yeah, black holes seem to form all over the place.
There's literally whole models about how if the universe wasn't finely tuned, then it would be nothing but black holes, or be nothing but a single black hole.
Sure.
Everything would collapse into it. Like, there's whole models about that, right?
So how many universes have you studied?
If you think it's optimized for black holes, but there's all this stuff that says that it's not optimized for black holes, and all these models that people put forth, like, how do you substantiate that position?
Well, it seems to be the case that black holes seem to be forming all the time, and the way that gravity attracts mass to mass, it seems that, sort of the end result is singularities forming. I think it was Lawrence Krauss that actually said that singularities, that the universe is fine-tuned for black holes, and I'd rather listen to a physicist rather than, a theologist, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, I know I love how you use your little smart-ass comments in that context, but I'm talking about that what I'm arguing is from the physicists in relation to the expansion of the universe, why it is the way it is, why it hasn't collapsed into a black hole, et cetera, is part of the whole fine-tuning problem. Like,
so,
have you actually read this?
Yeah, there's a number of, hypotheses. There's a multiverse hypothesis. There's a number of other hypotheses
the multiverse hypothesis has
why
zero to do
the
with
universe has the
Mark,
things
shut
the
up.
way that it
Dude,
does.
this is ridiculous. I really, you drive me up the freaking wall, dude. You act like you actually have paid attention to this stuff, and then you shift over to, well, there's things with the multiverse. The multiverse has nothing to do with the necessities for the fine-tuning of our universe. Okay, if you want to claim, oh well, it could be a multiverse, therefore all the factors that are necessary could somehow exist, which is hilarious. That still doesn't. That does not substantiate your point about us. Your claim that we're more optimized for black holes, when we're not optimized for black holes, is the whole point. If there's a multiverse, there might be universes that are optimized for black holes, and because if there were, then it would just be a massive black hole and nothing else. I mean, God, man, it just amazes me how you make these suppositions, claim that you're not having faith, and then just are so superficial in your responses, man. It's really astonishing.
Yeah, so as I said, we don't exactly know, but there's a number of hypotheses of how that.
So we don't exactly know, but you're not the one that has faith.
So there's a number of hypotheses, the multiverse
Correct.
one being
Correct.
among them. The whole point is that we only have one universe we only have one universe to examine, and this is the only one.
Are you or are you
not
full of faith?
We can't really tell what kind of life would have evolved in another universe. It's kind of weird that you keep sort of saying, talking trash about me and then just muting me and not allowing me to talk. I don't think you're...
I've been allowing you to talk for quite some time.
Yeah, I don't think you're acting in good faith. So there's a number of hypotheses.
Okay, so let's just mute you again as you act like a small child. Now, answer basic questions. Do you think that your unsubstantiated position that nothing but hypotheses to somehow explain why the universe the way it is it your position that does not require any faith?
I don't think it requires any faith under the definition that was given to me by C. Brown. I mean, if you're using some other definition of faith, the definition I got was believing something from your heart and the belief in the confidence in something unseen or unobserved, basically. So if that's the case, I'm not using faith. If you're using a different definition of faith, I would love to hear it.
Well, the general definition from the Bible is pistis. The Greek word is pistis, and it means trust based on evidence, and is the actual original meaning from the New Testament era.
Okay.
So do you have any trust in one of these hypotheses being true, in spite of the fact that it has not been substantiated?
Okay, well, I would say I do have trust on evidence. I think everybody in their life has trust on evidence.
Do we have any evidence for the multiverse?
Well, I didn't say that I knew a multiverse exists. I said it was a hypothesis.
That's not what I asked you. I said,
so
do we have any
sure.
evidence for the multiverse?
There's a lot of maths that seems to support it, so we can do modeling for it. But do you mean hard evidence? No.
Those are all hypotheticals. Is there any empirical evidence for the multiverse?
What do you think a hypothesis is?
A hypothesis is not empirical evidence.
Yeah, that's right. I said it was a hypothesis.
It's a freaking idea. It's an idea, correct?
Yeah, so when I said that the multiverse is a hypothesis,
so is there any... So we're getting you back to basic...
Yeah.
Let's drill this down and stop with your dodging. Okay?
Yeah, so what's the first thing I said?
Is there any...
What's the first thing I said when you said, how did it occur? I said, we don't know. That's the first thing I said.
Questions. Is there any empirical evidence for multiverse? Yes or no?
No empirical evidence.
Okay, cool. So if, I'm not saying you do, but if you take the you take the position that a multiverse would be an explanation for it, would that require faith that the multiverse exists?
I only hold it as a hypothesis.
Oh my God. I literally just said, if you were taking it as a hypothesis, since you have no empirical evidence, would that position necessitate faith?
If I believed it would necessitate faith, because you said trust on evidence, but I don't trust in the multiverse hypothesis because it's exactly that, a hypothesis. Dude, it's not my fault.
Dude, I literally said, if you did. Try to pay attention, okay? If. Now, what's your next potential explanation for the fine-tuning of the universe? Go
I don't have something that I claim to know is the reason for the fine-tuning of the
What's the position
universe.
that you think is the most likely explanation for the fine-tuning of
the most
universe?
likely? I would tentatively say that the best hypothesis is multiverse hypothesis, but
Great. So
I'm not sure about that.
I'm glad we jumped around for this whole time for you to dance and dodge.
Look, you're trying to get me into something that I don't agree to. You're trying to say, hey, you believe this, you believe that. When I already stated it was a hypothesis and that I didn't believe it because I have no evidence for it.
Okay, let's meet your dumbass again. Okay, now we're getting to a point. Now, you have claimed that you have no faith whatsoever in regards to all this. We have now substantiated that you personally lean more towards a multiverse being the explanation for the fine-tuning of the universe. But you claim you have no faith in regarding this. So how can you say you hold this is the more likely explanation for something that you have no empirical evidence for, and then claim you are not faith is not a necessity for you in terms of your potential explanation for existence? Go ahead.
So I don't believe in any hypothesis. It's an unknown for a start. So what you're trying to do is sort of say, because you're saying alternative reasons than a God to the reason for the fine-tuning, because you basically believe it is God is the reason for the fine-tuning, I'm saying, hey, there's a lot of other hypotheses out there. And because I'm saying, hey, there's other hypotheses out there, you're trying to say, hey, you believe and claim to know this is the reason, which is dishonest because I haven't actually said that.
That's not.
That is exactly what you are doing.
That is not the point I'm making. We're going down a rabbit hole. Okay. Now, this is why I said, what is your next potential explanation for it?
What, apart from the multiverse theory?
Yeah. What's your next potential explanation that you think would have plausibility?
I haven't really thought about it, to be honest with you. I guess sort of natural law would probably be the next one I would say. Yeah.
Okay. So what is your
probably after that, if you're going to ask after that, I mean, we're going to get back to maybe, for instance, here's another one for you. How about interdimensional aliens? How about that one?
Okay, that's fine.
I don't believe that because there's no evidence for it, but I say, I'll repeat, I don't know why the universe supports life.
Good. So does that mean that you have unsubstantiated? You might not know what it is yet, but the explanation is unsubstantiated. Therefore, you have faith that the explanation is something other than God.
No, I say it can be God. I'm not convinced of that, but that could be possible. Sure.
Okay, so God could exist, but you claim there is nothing that would lead you towards that conclusion, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, cool. So is it your position that there is things like fine-tuning and exquisite improbabilities and the plethora of other things that you've heard over and over again, in no way, shape, form, or fashion could be construed as evidence in favor of the external intelligent agent being necessary to create the universe and all that exists?
So external intelligent agent, do you mean a god, or are you talking about the extra-dimensional aliens?
Either one.
Either one. I don't believe in either. No, I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that.
Okay, so you dismiss all of that evidence, all of those concepts, as potentially being evidence for.
Sure, as well as multiverse. I don't know why the universe is the way it is.
Okay, so but you just blanket dismiss all those things. Why?
Well, I don't blanket dismiss them. I just don't have enough evidence to convince me that they are true. And yeah, I lean towards multiverse more than another because they do have mathematical equations that seem to suggest it, but I'm not 100% convinced. Hell, I'm not even 50% convinced because we haven't got the evidence we need to make that conclusion, nor do I have the evidence I need to make the conclusion of God. And, I don't want to be mean, but I'm baffled that people do have evidence.
Okay,
the evidence presented.
Have we ever? It seems to me that you want empirically observed evidence, correct?
Yeah, I am a bit of an empiricist. I don't think there's any other way you can interact with reality except for your empirical senses. I mean, you can come up sort of with all kinds of things in your mind, but there's no reason to think they are real.
Okay, but you believe dogmatically in evolution, correct?
What do you mean? Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say dogmatically. There's a ton of evidence for it.
Okay, so is 99% of things such as like phylogenetic trees and such, are those all empirically observed, or are they inferences?
They're inference.
Okay, so...
I mean, most of science is inference.
Well, okay. Please don't tell me you're going to be one of those folks of like, if you saw it in the lab, it happened, 5 seconds prior, therefore it's inference. Please don't tell me you're one of those.
No, there's a lot of things we
like. Well, it's historical science, even if you did it in the lab, because it happened in the past.
No. What I'm saying is that no. Well, let me clarify. What I'm saying is there is a lot of disciplines that you do experiments and then you make inferences from them, right? So you might be a geologist. You can't see the mountains rise, but you take measurements and you sort of pay attention to the strata and the types of rocks, and you make inference.
Mm-hmm. But the inferences aren't always correct, are they?
Well, science isn't always correct, but it's the best thing we've got so far. If you've got a better way of evaluating the truth, I'd love to hear it.
Hang on. So
this just seems to be you questioning me. I can't seem to ask anything back, which I would like to do. It just seems to be an interview rather than a discussion.
Yeah, well, anyway, I'm getting to a point, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Yeah, so what I'm asking is there a better way to evaluate reality than science? Like, do you have a better methodology?
I have no issue with using... number one, I have no issue with science in any shape, form, or fashion.
Except the one science you don't like.
I have issues with the presuppositions that are derived from the naturalist, materialist worldviews in relation to what would be the underlying necessities for different things that we observe to operate.
What presuppositions are those?
I have no issue with the science to discover how things operate in the natural world. Like, I don't understand why so many atheists on YouTube seem to think that must be a direct contradiction.
Well, it's because evolution and geology and stuff are a science. But what presuppositions are being made that you have a problem with?
The presupposition from the naturalist perspective is that everything must be explained through purely natural processes.
Well, that's
the presupposition.
Well, that's not methodological naturalism. That's philosophical naturalism. That's ontological naturalism.
Methodological naturalism in science, it's literally written in how they approach it. There are no other explanations other than naturalistic ones.
No, it actually,
this is like,
science
actually
says
it is.
That
and I'll have to go find, dude, that comes directly from, I'm drawing a blank at 5 o'clock in the morning my time. Of the source, but that's directly from a very high-profile academic source.
Well, the problem is that as far as I understood,
I'm finishing my point.
Methodological naturalism meant the methods are natural, not like the conclusion.
Dude, it is a well-established concept in modern academia that there's no other explanations other than purely naturalistic ones. If you don't think that is the case of how things are being approached in the vast majority of academia, I don't know what alternate universe you live in, because that's the fact. That is a well-established fact. It's a well-recognized fact. And if you want to claim that that's not true, I mean, seriously, I can't take you seriously anymore. If you don't think that that's the way it's approached, and in writing that that's the way it's approached in modern academia. I mean, seriously, please don't tell me you're actually in denial of this.
Okay, so what's the difference between ontological naturalism and methodological naturalism?
Okay. All right. On that note, folks.
Well, what's the difference?
Anyway, last words. I'm going to bed. It's too late. I'm getting irritated.
Good discussion. I've been at this for 8 hours. I'm going to go to bed too. I wanted to talk to Mark about chromosome 2 fusion.
Okay. All right. If you guys want to talk, no. I'm going to bed.
I think it's hilarious you're running away from the question. All I asked is what's the difference.
Okay. On that note, he's freaking gone.
Well, here, let me just say this, because I've been at it for 8 hours. I'm tired anyways. Mark and I, we do get along, although we disagree. So maybe Mark and I, we can just pick chromosome 2 fusion and ERVs. There are some points I wanted to discuss there. But I am exhausted, and maybe him and I, I'm sure a lot of people would like to see it, maybe him and I can do a formal debate on just those 2 topics at some point in the next, I don't know, month or something. So, but anyways, yeah, solid after show. I'm exhausted. I can't even keep my eyes open anymore. We've been at it for 8 hours. So, thanks to everybody who joined. And yeah, that's it for me.
Right on. Appreciate it, Donnie. Anybody else want to have last words? Because we're wrapping up in like 45 seconds. So go. Anybody else saying anything? Okay, cool. Well, folks, I hope everybody has a great night and has some good sleep. Or if you're getting up in the morning already, congratulations. Yep. Marky Mark, you crack me up, buddy. You have a blast seeing me not be able to answer a question. Okay, bro. If that's what you think, you're even more moronic than I thought. So, next time you and I talk, you're banned from my studio for actually, I'm not gonna ban him. I won't ban him. I won't be a dick. But why don't we just set up a formal debate? Because this is ridiculous. You act like you're so knowledgeable, but the small-mindedness is astonishing. It's hilarious. I don't have any faith. Well, what I think would be better explanations than the alternative worldview well, I don't have the evidence for those either, but I think those are way better than your worldview. But I don't have any faith that my non-established worldview has more substance or is more likely to be true. It's just freaking hilarious. I can't take it. Anyway, everybody, have a good night. Enjoy yourselves. See you next time. Oh, can't start doing these again. Staying up so late. Have a good night, everybody.